away than I am. I don't know how long you've been staying in Boston, but if you look at my t-shirt, it does seem like this is a bit of a spelling mistake. Seems like there's a few R's missing in Harvard. This is just a play on the local Boston accent. You may notice people here have some trouble pronouncing their R's. So instead of car, we say ka. Instead of park, we say park. So of course, instead of Harvard, we say Harvard. You guys will definitely hear me slipping in and out of this accent throughout the tour. It's just the way I was born and raised. I apologize. Awesome. So on today's tour, we're going to discuss 4 major themes. The first of these 4 themes is Harvard culture. So I told you all I'm studying engineering here at Harvard. At most other schools, they would probably call me an engineering major. At Harvard, they call me an engineering concentrator. A concentration is the exact same thing as a major or a course of study. Here at Harvard, we like to use some fancier terms to make ourselves feel just a little bit more important. So throughout today's tour, I will be using some of these terms to help you all understand Harvard culture a little bit better. So our second theme of the day is going to be Harvard history. In just a few minutes, I will give you the full history lesson of Harvard. But what you need to understand is that Harvard is really, really old. We were founded in 1636. That was well before the signing of the United States Constitution. So as you all can imagine, there is quite a bit of history here at Harvard. What we're going to focus on more specifically is how American history relates with Harvard history. For our third theme of the day, we're going to take a look at Harvard architecture. We all need to understand for this theme is that unlike our rival schools, Princeton and Yale, Harvard doesn't build any building to look old. So if you notice that all of these buildings around us look pretty old, that's because they are all very old. If you see a building that looks pretty ugly, it's probably also pretty new. And we can literally trace Harvard's history through its architecture. So that will be our third theme of the day. And our fourth and final theme is the Harvard-Cambridge rivalry. So the city of Cambridge and Harvard University have existed here together for almost 400 years. So as you can imagine, throughout those 400 years, they have tended to not get along so great. So for our fourth theme, we will take a very close look at this famous Harvard-Cambridge rivalry. So with that being said, the first example of our Harvard-Cambridge rivalry is right behind you all. If you all look at that small little green-gray shack over by the Johnson Gate, that tiny little building is the guardhouse. And it's, as I told you, it's a perfect example of the Harvard-Cambridge rivalry. So when Harvard began plans for that guardhouse, the Cambridge Historical Society still had some jurisdiction over the land. They made Harvard submit not 1, not 2, but 300 different sets of blueprints before they approved of that final masterpiece, giving the guardhouse a final price tag of $57,000, making it the most expensive building per square foot here on Harvard's campus, also wasting a full year's tuition. And then behind me really is the central part of Harvard Yard. This is where I'm going to give you guys that history lesson I promised you. So in 1636, Massachusetts Bay Colony founded New College right here in Cambridge. Now let me just remind you that 1636 was only 16 short years after the Pilgrims first arrived in the New World at Plymouth Rock. So as you might imagine, Harvard had extremely humble beginnings. I told you it was not called Harvard in our first years, we were called New College. In our first academic year, there was not a single student, professor, or building here on campus. It was 2 years later, in 1638, that a man by the name of John Harvard died, and when he did, he left his land, a small sum of money, but most importantly, his rare library collection to the school. Thus, it was named after Mr. Harvard. So as I told you, we are going to correlate American history with Harvard history. As the United States was developing into a mature nation, Harvard too was developing into a mature university. Very shortly before the signing of the United States Constitution, Harvard founded Harvard Medical School in 1782. This was the first of our graduate programs. And then throughout the 1800s, while the United States was experiencing its greatest era of growth and development, Harvard too was experiencing their greatest era of growth and development. It was in the 1800s that they added the law school, the divinity school, the dental school, and to top off the century, the business school. Throughout the 1800s, Harvard was becoming more of the university that we know it as today. However, there was still a very important thing missing here at Harvard. There were no women. So to remedy this, in 1879, Harvard formed the Harvard Annex to give women the opportunity to receive a Harvard education. This was later renamed Radcliffe College. It was located about 15 minutes west of here down Garden Street. And in the early years, classes were completely segregated. So professors would come here in the morning to teach the men, and they'd then stroll up to Radcliffe Yard in the afternoon to teach the women the exact same material. This was very inefficient, as you can imagine, but then this lasted all the way until World War II. During World War II, there were not many men around here at Harvard, so Harvard brought the Radcliffe ladies here to Harvard Yard to live and take classes. And while the women of the United States were proving that they could hold down the fort without the men, the Radcliffe women proved themselves in Harvard classrooms. So from this point on, classes did become completely integrated. Dormitories began their integration in the 1970s. By 1980, every dormitory on campus was completely co-ed. And finally, in 1977, Harvard and Radcliffe signed a formal agreement that all Radcliffe women would receive all of their schooling here at Harvard. So with all of this progress, I'm sure that you will be shocked to learn that men and women didn't actually receive the same diploma until 1999. Up until this point, women were receiving diplomas co-signed by the presidents of Harvard College and Radcliffe College. In 1999, the two were finally fully united under Harvard College, and Radcliffe College ceased to exist as a separate college. So here on the Harvard Tour, we tell you that 1999 is the official end of sexism here at Harvard. We do understand this is a very bold claim to make, so we do have two more pieces of evidence to support it. The first is that our current university president, Ms. Drew Gilpin Faust, is the first female president in Harvard's history. The second was that the graduating class of 2010 was the first class at Harvard to graduate more females than males. It's a fact that all Harvard ladies are extremely proud of. All the Harvard men are equally excited about it too. Now I'm just going to move behind